Good day, everyone. My name is Liberty Betsaida Monteagudo from Nagcarlan, Laguna. I'm handling grade 6 pupils of San Francisco Elementary School, teaching all the subjects. So today I'm here to discuss one of the literary criticism approaches, which is the formalism. I hope you learn something from this. Let's start with the meaning of formalism. Formalism in literary theory refers to critical approach or approaches that analyze, interpret, or evaluate the inherent features of a text. These features include not only grammar and syntax, but also literary devices such as meter and figures of speech. The formalist approach reduces the importance of a text's historical, biographical, and cultural context. Based on my research, formalism is also known as the new criticism. This approach actually examines literary text or artwork through its aesthetic composition, which includes the form, the language, the technique, and the style. So these formalists believe that the art object or a literary text can be isolated from the social, cultural, and historical influences. Actually, there is another formalism approach, which is the Russian formalism discussed by Ma'am Nenita. However, the Russian formalism focused on the literariness of the text, the refamiliarization, the material and device, story and plot, or the narrative voice, while the new criticism focused on the text as an object that can be analyzed independent of the author, the world, or the reader. New criticism was a formalist movement in literary theory that dominated American literary criticism in middle decades of the 20th century. It actually emphasized close reading, particularly of poetry, to discover how a work of literature functioned as a self-contained, self-referential, aesthetic object. New criticism also shows practice of appreciation of author, asserts that understanding a work comes from looking at it as a self-sufficient object with formal elements, and to know how a work creates meaning became the quest. Now let's have the strengths and weaknesses of formalism. Let's have first the strengths. So it makes a science of literary criticism. Viable method enables a professional discipline. It develops close reading skills. It is the basis for other language centered theories. It is actually great for analyzing poetry. It is actually a well known approach and a readily applied informally. So when we discuss literary criticism of a certain literary text to our students, we can actually apply or use this kind of approach, the formalism approach. Now let's have the weaknesses of the formalism. Some critics see it as incomplete, maybe because it ignores the historical, the moral, psychological, and the gender aspects, as well as the production and the reception, and is actually cannot be applied easily to long forms. That's why earlier I mentioned that one of the strengths of formalism is that it is great to analyze a poetry or to analyze poetry. And also another weakness is that it has the similarity of conclusion, and the criticism is always inferior to the object it studies. Now let's discuss some of the key persons behind the formalism. First one is Ivor Armstrong Richards, or also known as I.E. Richards, who has been called as the father of new criticism. Actually, he was one of the first to study literary interpretation as a kind of science. Another one is Robert Penn Warren, an American poet, novelist, and literary critic, and was one of the founders of New Criticism. Another key person is John Crow Ransom, who was an American educator, scholar, literary critic, poet, essayist, and editor. He is considered to be a founder of the New Criticism School of Literary Criticism. Another one is Alan Tate. He is an American poet, teacher, novelist, and a leading exponent of New Criticism. Now let's proceed with the discussion in do's and don't in reading as a formalist critic. So these are the do's. Let's have the first one. You must be a close or careful reader who examines all the elements of texts individually. Next is questions how they come together to create a work of art, respects the autonomy of work, achieves understanding of it by looking inside it, not outside or beyond. Next is to allow the text to reveal itself. The text is a self-contained entity and analyze how the elements work together to form unity of form. Okay, so now let's have the don'ts in reading as a formalistic critic. Okay, first, we don't look beyond the work by reading the author's biography or the literary style. Then, we don't examine the work's historical background and the condition of the society during the time that the literary piece was written, and then the text influences or prior similarity with other works, and we don't take the elements distinct and separate from each other. Okay, now let me share to you some important considerations in formalism. First, we have the form. So under the form, we have to look for the motives, such as the rhyme, scheme, the recurrences, repetition, and the likes. And we examine the point of view, the prosody, the narrator, the personality. We also scrutinize the structure. The plot, is it chronological? And we have to observe the development of form. Does it show similarities and differences? Another important considerations in formalism is the diction. So under the diction, we look for the denotation or connotation, which is the allusions, etymology, or synonyms. And we examine the symbols, such as the objects, artifacts, events, images, and follow the work's unity. How do elements conspire? Another consideration is unity. So under unity, we watch out for tension, such as the conflict of these elements. And then we also analyze the figure of speech used in a literary piece, such as the ambiguity, the irony, the paradox, and the likes. So now let's discuss the things that don't appear in a formalist criticism. First is the paraphrasing. So any change to a text, whether in form, diction, or unifying devices, makes the work no longer itself. That's why we don't see it in a formalism approach. Next is the intention. The author's intention in writing the piece is not actually important, but what the author did is the main concern in formalism approach. Okay, so another thing that doesn't appear in a formalist criticism is the biography. We all know that biography is a study of author's life and by extension the social and historical condition in which the work was written. Meanwhile, the formalism approach only focuses in analyzing the features of a text. Another one is the affect. So, as readers digress by paying attention to other things, they can also go astray by paying attention to their own reaction to the work. Okay, let's try to have some examples. One story that is closely examined in a formalist fashion is Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka. So, in a story, a man named Gregor Samsa suddenly transformed into a bug. His abrupt and unexplained transformation is juxtaposed with a lot of really mundane day-to-day details. So, from a close reading, one can get a glimpse of the loneliness that Gregor feels on a daily basis, and the transformation could be a literal manifestation of Gregor's alienation from the society. Another literary work that can be closely examined is Translations from the Natural World by Leigh Murray. In this poetry book, Murray makes birds, cows, bats, and other favorites of the animal kingdom talk. So the structure, language, and literary devices presented in each poem provide a unique way in which Murray can express a different emotion. But by closely analyzing the text, one can appreciate the artistry of his words while also understanding the importance of viewing life through a different lens. Okay, that's all. Just remember that the focus of any formalist analysis will center on the grammatical, the rhetorical, and the logical connection within the text. I hope you learned something from my discussion. Thank you so much for watching. God bless us all. Bye!